Hello, I'm Robert, and I wrote the Imaginary Bullshit Nibiru article. So I thought it might help to actually talk face to face like this on video. And so normally I wouldn't even think about writing about something as nonsensical as this. And I think this may be the reason, part of the reason why you don't get much written about it by the sensible science bloggers and such like, because it's just so silly. And when you start criticising something, then in a way you give the kind of dignity, and they get citations. They'll say so and so has criticised me, but they're wrong. I've actually, if I start criticising these people, I give them a certain amount of credibility just by criticising them. So I think that's part of the reason that astronomers don't do that. In academic journals, this is very strong. If someone writes a rubbish article in a very poor quality journal, then nobody will bother to debunk them, because if they do, it increases their citation count and makes them more respectable. And but in the case of Nibiru, I just felt I had to, because people are getting so scared by it. And so I want to talk first of all about how you can decide whether you can trust how you can decide what you can trust on the internet to start with. So most people just are completely lost at sea. They go to the internet, and they often end up places like Before It's News. And so Before It's News, that's a website. It has these stories that if you're not very used to how it all works, they may look very convincing. But for instance, the top news recently, when I went to Before It's News, to give an idea of the quality of this site, then the top news was that a military pilot had exposed a great secret from that the US all this time has been flying around on a flat Earth, and all the military pilots and the airline pilots know this, and that was their top story. And this chap has finally spilled the leak, and he has actually confessed that he's been flying all his life on a flat Earth. And they're for some reasons obscure. I didn't actually bother to read through to the end of the article. It was just such total nonsense. I mean, for reasons obscure, which presumably they explain later in the article, the US government needs to hide the fact that we're living on a flat Earth and pretend it's round. That is the quality of... so you do get sites like that. It's basically, they're like April Fool's Day, except every day is an April Fool's Day. And then there's also newspapers and they never say April Fool at the end. And sometimes these people actually believe these things. So the author of this article may have been completely serious, and they actually are a flat earther. After all, there are lots of people who believe that the Earth is flat. Not huge numbers, but enough so that some of them have access to a computer and can put up an article on Before It's News. Now, you also have here in the UK anyway, we have these newspapers like the Daily Star and the so-called the red top tabloids, because they have a red bar across the top of the newspaper where you can figure out what they are. And they write these. They basically every day is April Fool. At least most sensible people realise that that's what they're like. They have these complete hoax stories in there, and they're just meant to get you to buy the story. And sometimes they're quite scary, sometimes they're very silly things. So they might say, for instance, that a baby boy has been born in India who was a hybrid of a human being and an extraterrestrial. And they'll put this as a serious story and never anywhere say it's April Fool at the end. They just present it like that. And it's just a kind of convention. And it's like clickbait, these titles that get people to click on it and then read it. And I think most people reading those articles, I mean, hard to say, maybe some people take them seriously, but generally it's sort of like when you go to see a scary movie, a horror story or something like that, and there's an enjoyment about being scared, and or about seeing something incredible that isn't really true, but it's kind of enjoyable, it's fun. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have most Hollywood movies, many Hollywood movies just wouldn't be written if human beings didn't enjoy being scared. So it's with that spirit behind it. And so, but if you don't enjoy being scared in this way, or if you take them deadly seriously, well, they're not really working for you. It isn't really the aim of these journalists to properly scare people. I don't think so. And I think you need to understand that there are articles that are written like that are actually not really meant to be taken 100% seriously, a little bit tongue-in-cheek. And then there are also people who actually believe these things. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, about how you then tell which of these can be trusted. So sometimes, if you happen to know that red top tabloids are like that, and that before its news is like that, you just go there expecting to find things like that. Now some websites have actually set up and say this is actually saying their information, this is a hoax news site. So there's a famous one called The Onion. So all the stories there are hoax, and it's a kind of satire on serious news reporting. Though they don't have any stories about Nibiru on The Onion, I'm glad to see, and probably because they realise that it gets people scared. Anyway, for whatever reason, I did a search on The Onion for Nibiru, there's nothing there. Anyway, so I want to talk a little bit about how you can tell between a fake story or a hoax story or an unreliable story and a story that you can trust. So there's something you could call rational trust, where you can actually reason to the point, to the stage where you actually trust someone because you have reasoned out that they're trustful, they're trustworthy, and that they know their subject. And so anyone who's done a little bit of academic research knows about this sort of thing, but maybe many of you just haven't even given it much thought. And then how to check your sources. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about the real asteroid impacts and the real science, and a little bit about some of the things in my article about why these things are totally nonsense over and above the checking of the sources. But we'll talk about the sources first.